We're all beautiful little butterflies. If you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, you're made that way for a reason, embrace it. But it's just to my fellow introverts, it's just like, definitely embrace your introversion, because we live in more of an extrovert-leaning society that'll oftentimes try to make you feel like you're inferior or that you should be more like an extrovert. Community, man. We talked about this last night, but good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Good morning. All right. You guys ready for a life-changing presentation? Yes. Here we go. Like it says, FI Evangelist. This is a self-proclaimed. I lead a rich fantasy life. It's something I aspire to be, but in actuality, I'm a hardcore introvert, to which many of you are probably just like, oh joy, an introvert is giving a presentation. So anybody, just honest real quick, is anybody in here just love to get up and speak in front of other people? Is it your passion? Yeah, there's always a few. That's just like, we got to become besties. I got to learn your... Is it okay for guys to say besties? Are you going to take my man card away now for saying that? No, but the real question is, how many in here would say it's the last thing on earth you'd want to do is get up and speak in front of other people? Yeah, my fellow introverts. The funny thing is, even asking an introvert that question to raise their hand in public, it sets off a mild panic. It sets off a mild panic response. So I know a lot of you are introverts and didn't raise your hands, but I totally understand that. But anyway, I think this meme kind of describes like what most of us feel. What's funny about that is it's actually true, because I don't know if you guys can see these stats. Public speaking is usually a bigger fear than the fear of death. And it's like 75% of the world's population is afraid to get up and start speaking in front of other people. And a lot of these people, they're dreadfully, dreadfully afraid to get up and speak in front of other people. And this just shows some office fears. There's like 6 listed, but 4 of the 6 have to do with getting up and speaking in front of other people. Every introvert's dream come true, just like to get up and speak in front of other people. But how many in here would you say that you identify as an introvert? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, we love the spotlight, don't we? We love doing that. How'd you guys like Steven's icebreaker game last night? Yeah, that's always a fan favorite. But the funny thing is, I remember my first CampFI experience. Now you got to keep in mind, I'm telling this from the perspective or the mindset of just like a classic introvert. So if it sounds dramatic, introverts are usually very dramatic in their own heads, but it doesn't necessarily express. So anyway, that first night we get there after dinner, they start gathering chairs in a circle. And so my introvert alarms are going off, and I'm just like going over to my wife, I'm like, what are they doing with that circle over there? Because in my bright mind, I'm thinking, circle, we're either about to play a mean game of duck, duck, goose, which you gotta admit would be pretty awesome, a bunch of adults running around, But anyway, back to that. So it's either duck, duck, goose, or something's about to go seriously sideways for this introvert. So anyway, sure enough, they say, everybody gather around in the circle, face each other, and why don't you get up and share a little something about yourself? To which I'm like, ruh-roh, Raggy. You gotta keep in mind at this point in time, I had 0 to little interest in FI. As a matter of fact, I don't even know how you got me to go. How'd you get me to go to that first one? It's like a miracle. You probably told me something like, there's lots of food and basketball. And I was like, okay, that sounds fair. But anyway, to say I wasn't happy about this little circle of sharing thing is an understatement. And keep in mind that it's just like I'm in public. So I can't properly express my displeasure with my wife for getting me into this. But at that moment in time, all I can do is like, just give that's a horrible stare, but you just give that stare. And in that stare, I was just like, what in the world did you get me into? I'm like, I don't want to go around and share my feelings with a bunch of tree-hugging hippies. Like, what's all this circle stuff for? I was like, this is just the first night. What are they going to have us do on the second and third night? I was like, man, this place is extreme. I was like, just give me a quiet corner with my books. I'll be happy. But I ended up doing it. I actually ended up really, really loving the experience. And so for me, how did I, I was at the beginning, like at this first CampFI, I was the FI reluctant guy. I was your model introvert. So how did I go from being this guy the FI reluctant guy, to this bundle of joy, the FI Evangelist. You know, I'm going to get into that, but I want to touch upon just a little bit on introversion. Last year, Doug Cunningham, he was one of the speakers at CampFI, and we got in a conversation with him, and he said something interesting. He said, this is the most extroverted group of introverts I've ever seen in my life. You know, and I thought this next thing, this is lots of fun, because to me, I identify with every one of these. I'm leaving it up here in case you want to take a picture, because if you're an art introvert, I don't know, I feel like with these, this is just nails it. But actually all these that I have highlighted are the best for me. But number 6 is hilarious to me. It's like, always have an escape plan. You know, that's just like introvert survival tactics 101. It's like hunting and escaping. Have your strategy, know where that exit door is. So these nail me just perfectly. The next one, these are just some good books on introversion, like Quiet, a really excellent book. It's a very popular one too. The Thriving Introvert, this is actually a great one. And this last one, yes, even in the church, those filthy extroverts have corrupted things, right? I know it's disgusting, but no, I like extroverts. I love them. I just do it from a distance. No, I'm just kidding. It's just, everybody's fearfully and wonderfully made. We're all beautiful little butterflies. If you're an introvert, you're an extrovert, you're made that way for a reason, embrace it. But it's just to my fellow introverts, it's just like, definitely embrace your introversion, because we live in more of an extrovert-leaning society that'll oftentimes try to make you feel like you're inferior or that you should be more like an extrovert. But honestly, you know, I feel like a lot of times though, as introverts, we do need to stretch ourselves, especially when it comes to like socially related events. Okay. Quotes. I am a serious quote dropper. I love doing quotes. It's mainly because I'm like 100% unoriginal, so I depend on other people to help me out. And this has been one of my favorite quotes. It says, most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the graves with the song still in them. And this is from Joe Rogan. He said, that's the only way you ever get where you want to go. You have to take a path that's dangerous, and most people want to take the safe path, which leads you stuck in quiet desperation. So next, we're going to go over what's called Brad's Big Three. Say that 3 times really fast. But to me, it's like fear, especially these 3 fears, fear of failure, fear of looking dumb, and fear of the unknown, especially for introverts. I feel like this is what keeps you down, and it keeps you like settling for that less than type of life, or the life of quiet desperation. You know, where you're wanting or aspiring for more, but you actually end up settling for less. So, you know, anytime you're trying to grow and become better, I mean, there's just 2 things. You have to do this. You have to embrace fear and change, because it's inevitable, you know? And I like the title of this, The Danger of the Comfort Zone, because the thing is, like, when you get too cozy in the comfort zone, I think there's certain tendencies that start to take place. For example, like you become, in my opinion, you become like less likely to try to change and try to branch out. You almost become resistant to change. So it's just like less inclined to make change. And also, if you don't get outside of that comfort zone, you know, I feel like it makes you a lot more susceptible to fear. And if this pattern continues, what happens is there's just like, your life kind of starts to stall out because there's no change, there's no motion. So what happens is you stagnate. And if any of you have ever come across a stagnant body of water before, it's not pretty, smells nasty too. So this is an interesting graph because it just shows the distance between the comfort zone and the growth zone. And I think we've all heard the quotes before, like, without risk, there can be no growth. And success is just on the other side of your comfort zone. Now, I know these have been abused or just overused quite a bit, but there's a ton of truth to these. And I think we need to hear things sometimes repeatedly in order for it to sink in, or just maybe hear it in a different light. So, introvert to introvert. These are kind of my tips on how to help you break out of your comfort zone. It's for extroverts, can use it too, but it's just for introverts. I think sometimes we get stuck in our comfort zone a little too much. So, number one is surround yourself with people that are doing the things you aspire to do. There's a quote, I think it's from Jim Rohn. He said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with." And honestly, I mean, that's half the reason we're here right now, You know, you want to surround yourself with people that are wanting to do the same things you do. So number 2 is like write down 3 things that you would like to try. And I think the problem with this one is we always have this mindset of like, you have to go big or go home. And I think that's the wrong approach. I think it's just, you need to go small, go for the small victories, gain confidence, and then start raising the bar. And then get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I mean, I'm grossly uncomfortable up here. I mean, this is just, but it's good for you, you know? But it's just like, it's always at the beginning. The road is gonna be bumpy, but usually it starts to smooth out and things get better. And I do stress usually because you gotta keep this in mind. Not everything is gonna work out. You shouldn't go into things with this mindset of like, I'm gonna quit possibly. You definitely need to apply yourself, give a good college effort. But at the same time, if it doesn't work out, learn from it and move on. Don't beat yourself up. Next, feel the fear, do it anyway. There's actually a book about this, but it's like, do it afraid, because no matter what, fear is gonna be there in some capacity. And it's just like, there's a quote from Mark Twain that says like, courage is resistance to fear, mastery of fear, but it's not the absence of fear. Fear is gonna be there, so you just have to kind of move through it. And the last one is just show up, because there's a quote that says 80% of people, or 80% of success is just showing up. So don't talk yourself out of it, just do it and just show up. Okay, so why community? What's the big deal about community? One key characteristic of the FI community is how supportive and communal it feels. We have a hive mind. Companies can only dream of achieving the level of open communication, sharing, and continuous education that we as a community seem to do pretty natural. And I don't know how to explain this, but for me, it's just like things just seem to click here. You know what I mean? It's just like, I don't know, it's kind of like when I get here, it feels like I'm in a miniature version of the flow state. I know that kind of sounds extreme or like I'm trying to sell a cult or something like that, but it feels natural here. This is just a really great group of people we have. The community effect. This is for me personally like what the FI community and CampFI really helped me with. And I'm going to kind of go through them a little quick, but it showed me things that were hidden that were brought to the surface. Like it drew things out of me. Passions were uncovered, things I didn't even know existed. Through just like conversations and these experiences, it helped me realize some things. And it encouraged me to challenge myself, you know, stretch myself to be better and to try new things. But for me and for everyone, I sincerely believe this, is just like, you know, getting outside of your comfort zone, it can seriously open doors for like self-discovery and personal growth. Now this was of course more personal effects. Now this is what I feel like the FI community can do for anybody. And number one, these are just some of the benefits and the highlights. It's just like sharing ideals in like an open and friendly environment. I can't tell you how many times I got in conversations with people here and they're just like sharing ideals, sharing their stories. And I was able to take home like such valuable information and start applying it in my life. And so that's just awesome that we have that. Next is sharpening and clarifying your goals and priorities. Once again, just like listening to the different speakers and the one-on-one conversations, it really helps you to tune in and focus on your own priorities and goals and what's important to you. Next is stories of testimony. Man, it's always the stories that stick. You know what I mean? It's just like, and these are real life stories. These are just like people like you and I. And when they get up there and share, I don't know, there's just something extremely inspirational to me about personal testimony. And this one is actually really important. It's being vulnerable. There was a book, well, I actually just listened to the podcast, but there's a book called The Mask of Masculinity. And of course, for guys more so, but what he's talking about is the power of vulnerability. And he's talking about, what he's really trying to drive home is when you can be vulnerable, it leads to more authenticity. And this was the most important thing that FI community did for me. It encouraged me to try new things. Now remember, I was the FI reluctant guy. I was the model introvert. But now this is like our 4th or 5th CampFI. And then now I'm just doing like a large presentation in front of, you know, a large audience, or doing a presentation in front of a larger audience. If you would have said 5 years ago that I would be doing this today, I would have said, no, there's not a chance. Because when Steven asked me, it's like, it's funny, you can ask Rebecca, I was just like, immediately, I was like, nope, not gonna happen. But she was like, in her wisdom, she's like, think about it, pray about it. And sure enough, like, yeah, it's definitely a good thing. But lastly, it's the people. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to express this properly, but it's like with CampFI and the FI community, it actually motivated me and pushed me to go further along in FI, because I didn't have any interest at first, but after coming to this CampFI and then getting engaged with our local group, after that, it just like took off. And because it was the people, it was the community that drove me to go further. I'm the FI Evangelist, so I have to have a preaching moment. And so here we go. It's just like, this stuff is really good for you on a personal level, but don't be selfish. Like, don't keep it to yourself. You know what I mean? If you don't have a FI group in your area, maybe try to start one. Or if there is a FI group and they're not that active, maybe try to rekindle that fire, because I think we have something really powerful here. And it's just, Rebecca and I are always surprised when we get in conversations with people how in their area they don't have an active FI group. And you know, if anybody's ever interested and if they really want to do this, you can talk to Rebecca and I. We can share some of the ideas that we've used and things we plan to do in the future. But yeah, I just think we've really got to get this out there. And now my favorite part of the presentation, I get to talk about movies, 80s movies. I'm an 80s movies fan. I want to see if anybody's know this one though. This is a classic. The Last Dragon. This is the story of Bruce Leroy. Yes. And Bruce Leroy, this guy was amazing at Kung Fu. But the thing is, like, he wasn't yet a master, and he hadn't reached the final level yet. And in this story, if you reach the final level, it's known because your body radiates with a sublime glow. So Leroy was on the search of the glow. And so the whole story is basically, he's trying to become a master, trying to attain the glow. And it's a story of adventures and misadventures and twists and turns. But towards the end of the show or the movie, he still hasn't, you know, become a master. He hadn't found the glow, so it's really frustrating. But at the very end, he gets in like a classic battle with his arch nemesis, Shogun, the Shogun of Harlem. What a classic. And this fight has everything. It has like the damsel in distress, good versus evil. It's an awesome, awesome fight. But at the end of the fight, he's getting beat pretty bad. So much so to the point where he's getting dunked in a big barrel of water. But on the last time, when he's getting dunked under the water, something snaps inside of him. He feels like this energy and like this power rise up in him. And he starts having these flashbacks and these memories of his Kung Fu training, his like master, the girl he likes, his family. And when he gets pulled out of that water the last time, he catches Shogun's punch. He's got the glow. So he crushes Shogun, saves the girl, rides off into the sunset. That's exactly how I like my movies. I don't like to be challenged with my movies. There's things that I like. I like the good guy to win. I want the bad guy to go down hard. Leroy, he had the glow in him the whole time, and he didn't even know it. And it took a series of events. It took external situations, climaxing with the fight with Shogun in order to pull out that thing he didn't realize he had within, which was the glow. And I didn't go into all the details of the show or the movie, but he had to put himself quite a few times in some really uncomfortable situations. He had to get outside of his comfort zone consistently. So I don't know, maybe there's some event, some challenge, some situation, something that causes you to maybe stretch a little bit, get outside of your comfort zone, and maybe within that situation, you know, could be the catalyst for your own glow. So in closing, that's what I'm saying. Find those things, find your glow, find those things that can draw out those hidden potentials within you. For me, CampFI really helped me to do this, but it doesn't have to be community. It doesn't even have to be anything like that, but still, stretch yourself, get in the game. FI pupils, it's been an honor and privilege. Thank you for your time.